how do we harden the target? And this is really going to cause a lot of churn within the bases. So if you think away like a NAVFAC or a Mickey Cobb for the Marine Corps, how they're organized. They're not organized like this. Back in, I think it was like the mid-90s, they actually changed over where the MEFs used to basically be like Marine Corps Installations Command West. And the division commander, the MAW commander, they were in charge of the base. They changed over to this more administrative staff, which makes sense when the target's not the base. Right, so now you've got an administration that's talking about things like, the Golden Dome. We're going to somehow protect the perimeter. It's going to have to start with the installations. We move the infrastructure aboard the base. We protect it. We're probably going to have excess depending on what we go after for how we're going to produce this energy that we'll be producing and selling probably back to the grid or giving back to the grid in some manner. Right, so now we've hardened the civilian infrastructure by hardening the base. Right, but it's going to boil down to how well can we actually protect it from physical threats, from cyber threats, and these sort of things. Right. And I think that's the end of me getting ahead of my slides for the most part, but just way forward. We have to have our requirements developers and our professionals talking to the legislators, so theoretically we can actually get the legislation right, and it's clear in the actual law what we're allowed to do, because you think about it, I just described the CONUS policy. What do we have when we have a U.S. installation of CONUS? Right? For those of us who've been in like Japan or Okinawa and the geopolitical situation over there, what about that poor base commander who's now got to make a decision for collateral damage and protecting his base when that drone could fall, on a house in Okinawa? Right? It's bad enough. They had a whole stand down, what was it, 2 years ago, because a helicopter was flying over and a pizza box came out and landed on a car. And that turned into an entire political situation. We're now talking about potentially shooting down drones over their airspace where they could land on their land. Right, so we got to get that right. The training and operational changes, I kind of spoke to those. You're going to have to man, train, and equip a base operations center and stand it up that has the appropriate people to do a real kinetic defense, not just man the emergency services. Right, prioritizing that tanker availability. Right, until we get to the point where we're actually producing energy at the point of need and we're not completely dependent on this long supply chain of oil tankers. Because that tanker chain is not only logistically difficult, it's sucking up combat power to escort it. Right, and that's something that we just can't afford because ships are on a 40-year shipbuilding plan. And then finally, and this is where it kind of ties back, you can prove the concepts aboard the installation when the concepts are closely aligned with the expeditionary concept, right? So just like we talked in the expeditionary environment, on that installation, you got to produce power, you got to store power, you got to distribute power, right? And then that same modular concept can be then proven here and then moved into the expeditionary environment, right? That's all I have.